Hey guys! So I'm coming to you from the beginning of year 2 of my PMHNP program, and that means it is clinical time. So we are 3 weeks in to the fall semester, semester 4, year 2, however you want to put it. And this is the semester where I start clinicals. I can start clinicals anytime as soon as I get the green light from my school, which means the paperwork has gone through the PMHNP and their company, and all my information has been checked off and approved. So every year we have to have a drug test, a background check, an FBI BCI background check. We have to have a tuberculosis quant drawn in order to work safely with patients. I'm pretty sure we have to acknowledge that we reread the new handbook for the new year. That's another checkoff item, and make sure that BLS and any certifications are up to date. This is 2025, an odd year. This is license renewal year, so they have to make sure that our license has been renewed and up to date, which we have until the end of October to do that, but I went ahead, did it, submitted it, got it out of the way. So now I'm just waiting. I reached out. The school I'm at, they help find preceptors, which is really nice, and I hadn't heard anything about this semester or about clinicals, so I reached out a couple weeks ago, and they said they found me a site. They're waiting to finish up the paperwork with the site and with the PMHNP. Great, perfect. There's a site. It's in my area. I told them I would travel to the surrounding states. I'm in Ohio, so I said I could do Pennsylvania, I could do Michigan, I could do Indiana. I said, wherever you can find a spot, as long as it's not across the country, I can certainly make it happen. I don't regret that statement because they found a place in Ohio for me that's minutes away. But thinking about it now, that was probably a bad move because we need 200 clinical hours in this semester, and I would likely have to find some housing. I'd likely have to stay near these clinical sites during that time, and frankly, I'm pretty broke. It's hard to work a good amount of hours in school. So I'm not bringing in what I could be bringing in right now. And also, my ICU job is more and more difficult every time I go there. So I really don't want to pick up there, but that is the one that pays me the most. I work PRN in the ICU, and I work PRN on an inpatient psych ward. It seems like such old-fashioned terminology. Let's see, I work PRN in a state forensic hospital. That makes it sound kind of cool. So the state job doesn't pay as well for PRNs, but the work itself, as long as no crises pop up as a midnight nurse, it's very checklisty. It's very get all this done and then wait. And as long as nothing happens, give PRN medications as the patients need them, but it's not too bad. It's that, there's the possibility of getting homework done while you're at work. I understand that's not what companies want to hear, but I've heard many a nurse there say that they got their degree while on the clock, essentially. So that has its perks. That almost makes up for the pay difference, is being able to make sure that I get everything I need to do done for school. But the pay difference is nearly half. I'm making double in the ICU job. But it's awful every time I go there. The ratios are getting worse and the expectations are getting higher. And by higher, I don't mean we want you to provide good patient care, because I can get behind that. It's I want you to walk your vented patient up and down the hall, even though there's only one respiratory therapist on night shift covering 3 units. Tell me why you're not mobilizing your patients. Unrealistic expectations. So it's getting more and more difficult to work that job. I don't get a break. I don't get a chance to use the bathroom. I'm drained by the time I'm done with it for the most part. Even the good shifts are hard. If you're having a good shift, your coworker probably isn't having a good shift, because you can't have an entire ICU unit of good shifts at one time. It might be your turn, but somebody else is struggling, and if you don't help them, you feel bad about it. So I understand that the point of work is not to get your homework done and relax, but I don't think some people understand the constant stressful nature of an ICU job. And I'm pretty excited to get away from it eventually. Until then, I'm going to try and work what I can there, because it does pay pretty good. It makes me think quite a bit. And I think it really does quite a bit for me to keep up my critical thinking skills. But anyhow, that's not the point. The point is we're starting clinicals. So as soon as we can get everything taken care of, I just sent another email saying, hey, how's the process going? What can I do to help speed this up a little bit? So maybe someone will get back to me. So the first semester of clinicals. The first semester includes basically an inpatient setting. So it says this practicum will focus on psych care across the lifespan. Outpatient. I meant outpatient setting. In the outpatient mental health setting. It says the setting can be a psych private practice, or a community mental health outpatient office. And we can be precepted by a PMHNP, an MD with a psych focus, or a DO with a psych focus. So a psych nurse practitioner or a psychiatrist, those are our options. I've heard a lot of people from other programs say that they've had semesters where they followed counselors, like licensed social workers, licensed counselors, and that is nowhere on my paper. I understand the benefit of it for sure, but I don't see that built into this program. And I thought maybe I was just reading it wrong because everyone kind of assumes it's part of it, but I don't see it. Next semester, we are doing crisis stabilization, psych ER, and inpatient psych units. And again, we can have a PMHNP and a MD or DO psychiatrist. Okay, it looks like the final semester is a little bit more of a free-for-all. It's outpatient. We can do outpatient clinic, private psych practice, inpatient units, specialty care, so like substance use disorder programs or that type of thing. But again, the preceptors listed, PMHNPs and MD or DO psychiatrists. I don't see where we're doing any kind of psychotherapy unless it's incorporated into what the PMHNP does or what the psychiatrist does. So that'll be interesting. So it looks like I'm just kind of learning as I go. There's so much information that there's no point in my head of learning it all or like anticipating every move of the program until you kind of get into it, because it wouldn't have served me last year at this point to know what I was doing for clinicals, except for the fact of maybe searching out a PMHNP preceptor. But as I look at it now, I've got it pulled up. I've got the schedule pulled up, and it looks like this whole year, so fall semester, spring semester, summer semester, it's all Psych NP clinicals with a couple classes along with it, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. So I kind of went over the first one's outpatient, next one's inpatient, third one's kind of a mixed bag of whatever you choose, or if you find a cool specialization you want to check out. But we need to get 200 clinical hours each semester. So semesters are typically, 16 weeks to 2 8-week periods split up kind of. And that means I'm 3 weeks in. So I'm finishing up the third week now. So as long as I can get this figured out before there are like 10 weeks left in the semester, I'm still under 20 hours a week. And that's but that still has the potential to be 3 shifts in an office type setting, because typically those are 8-hour days. Plus PMHNPs have a lot more flexibility to make their own schedules. So it will be interesting seeing how I can manage to fit this into my schedule. But I'm flexible and we'll see how it goes. So I work midnights at my other job. So I'm really going to have to figure out, I might just have to work weekends or something, because there's no way I'm going to be able to work a midnight shift and recover in any capacity. Obviously not for a shift the next day, and even a shift the day after that. It's kind of difficult, but doable. So we'll just have to see how it plays out. So yeah, all of the important psych clinicals are going to be within year 2. And it wasn't explained to me this way when I applied, but I've heard it a handful of times that essentially the end of year 2 would be the end of your like master's program. If you were doing a master's, you have all of your psych clinicals in, you've got all of your didactic work in for that. The third year is all about the DNP project and DNP specific class. So I'm nearly positive that you're essentially done with an MSN after the second year, and you can take boards to become a PMHNP and then start working as a PMHNP as you finish the doctorate portion of your studies. I'll have to look into that a little bit closer, because that would certainly be an interesting twist that I hadn't thought of initially. But the whole third year is just doctorate related content. Yeah, 50 clinical hours for the DNP project in the first semester of the third year. Healthcare finance and economics, translating evidence into practice, advanced leadership and clinical practice, DNP project again in the second semester for 100 clinical hours. A residency practicum in the third and final semester for 150 clinical hours, and then more time spent for the DNP project, another 50 clinical hours. So in total, that's 600 PMHNP clinical hours and 500 DNP clinical hours. So for the 3-year program, it's 1,100 clinical hours. Let's do it. I feel like once the clinicals get rolling, things are just going to go so fast. So let's talk about, anticipation for the coming clinical experience. First off, what shouldn't be interesting to me, but I can't help but be a little bit excited about, is they sent out a dress code. Essentially business casual with a long white coat over it, which is kind of interesting because doctors don't get their white coat until after they graduate. They have the white coat ceremony. They have a short white coat all through their training and residency. And then when they officially graduate, they graduate to their long white coat that specifically says we need long white coats for this. So mine should be here tomorrow. Thank you, Amazon. So I need to throw together a couple outfits, and I might include that in this video. Let's try and talk through this. I run hot, and I'm going into fall clinicals now, eventually, essentially winter clinicals starting in January. So I need to figure out how I'm going to do my layers. In fact, I was getting super warm trying all these clothes on, and I feel like I look worse and worse each time I come out in a new outfit. I'm sure I'll have enough to work with. I just have to see how things go when clinicals start. Kind of take the lead from my preceptor, just so I'm prepared that I have something in mind that I can throw on and is appropriate for the clinical site. And I think this is more specific to the outpatient clinical site, because as someone who has visited a PMHNP or has, I have a PMHNP who prescribes for me. When I see her, it's definitely business casual. It is definitely blouses and slacks and no white coat, but I'm sure that's a preference thing that you can do once you graduate and you have your own practice or you get integrated or something. However, once we get to the inpatient setting, I'm curious to see how that will go. I wonder if scrubs would be appropriate or if they still do as casual with the white coat, because I work in the forensic state hospital and we don't have PMHNPs right now. Apparently they used to, but there's an issue with oversight with the psychiatrists. And I think they're trying to figure that out again, where they can bring in PMHNPs again, but for the time being, we don't have them. So I have seen the psychiatrists in scrubs before, especially on night shift when they're working as like the on-call provider. If they show up to a code or something, that I've seen them in scrubs and whatever. But I've also seen a fair share of them come in business professional wear. That'll be interesting to see how that goes. I wonder if I could utilize my place of work for the inpatient setting. But like I said, we only have psychiatrists, which is okay according to the paperwork. However, I just wonder how that would be attitude-wise. I know okay, all right, we're going off on a tangent here, or just at least off the path we were heading down. There are a handful of younger psychiatrists at my state job. So I do think that they would be easy to get along with and have decent information to pass along and be fair in evaluations as a preceptor. So that might be doable. However, there are also some older psychiatrists there, maybe some that come from cultures where women don't voice their opinions so much. And I have a feeling that I would not learn as much if I was with a psychiatrist like that. So I guess it just would depend on the psychiatrist. Maybe I need to start developing some relationships with these folks. However, I work midnights. There's so much strange things they do. Like day shift is so different in the hospital doing treatment teams. And I just don't know that I feel comfortable doing a day shift type thing in order to get closer with these psychiatrists. Also, I'm PRN and I'm new. So the need for me is on night shift. I'm helping at the facility if I can pick up night shifts. And that's what I'm there for. We'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Oh, it's getting kind of warm in my office and it's making my bangs decide to go two different directions. Okay, what else do I think about these clinicals? Well, first off, I have a feeling I'm very underprepared in actual diagnoses. So as an ICU nurse, when we get a patient with a psychiatric history, we say, hey, so-and-so's in the ICU for this reason. Also, they have a psychiatric history. And that's about the extent of it. It's never bipolar, diagnosed at this age, treated with this, follows with this. It's just, yeah, they're in the ICU. Because obviously if they're in the ICU, there's an acute issue going on. So just history of a psych issue, which means there's room for improvement when it comes to understanding the psych diagnoses. That's for sure. There's also room for improvement when it comes to understanding the psych medications. And I think that might be something I do on YouTube. I might take some time to break down each of the psych meds. Not only I can double as a study, it will help me dig deeper into the medications. It will help me remember it and internalize it if I make a video about it. Also, I'm super unreliable when it comes to posting at this point because I have been busy with school. So if I have an idea in mind that I might want to go through medications, that might help regulate the posting a little bit or something. I don't know. It's an idea. We'll see where it goes. It feels like extra homework, but because this is a clinical semester, we don't have a ton of actual work to do. If I was in clinicals, I'd probably think differently, but because I'm not in them yet, it's just mostly discussion posts, but it's for 3 classes. We had the first class that was essentially just get it done as fast as you can. So you can start clinicals. You have to satisfy every requirement, finish every lesson plan, take every test before you can even be considered to start clinicals. So that's done. That's out of here. I don't have to worry about that anymore. I finished it. Then we have, it's called online modality. They need to name these better. But the description is seminar care of the PMHNP patient. So essentially, it is like a companion class for starting clinicals. It's common diagnoses that might be seen in the outpatient setting, and interviewing techniques and documentation and all that kind of stuff. So useful. And there are discussion posts and tests in that. For the most part, it's been weekly discussion posts at this point. And then we have principles of psychopathology and psychopharmacology. Also interesting, also pretty necessary for going into clinicals to have an extra background on that information. And finally, we have the class that is essentially the clinical class. It's the one that is when you signed up for clinicals, it kind of like you were automatically signed up for the class as well. It's the practicum, but there's also things that you need to do for the practicum, which include discussion posts. And once you're in clinicals, filling out a SOAP note. It sounds like there's a website, Typhon, maybe, that we had to sign up for and pay for. And it's where we submit all of our patient interactions and our hours that we put in for the week. So once we are in clinicals, of course, we have to write the SOAP notes and the histories and recommendations and all of the good stuff and submit that. So that has potential to become time consuming, especially when there are still discussion posts and things due throughout the week in addition to that. All right, so those are my thoughts on starting clinicals this semester. If you're a PMHNP, let me know how it went for you. Let me know what would be good to, what kind of knowledge would be good to come in with, what kind of tools I might need, what the providers are expecting of me, and give me some advice. Or if you're a student, let me know what you're concerned about or what your thoughts are, or what kind of clinicals you're heading into. So I'm going to see if I can put together some kind of medication video now. So I will see you next time. Have a good week.